Okay, I'd like to call the Tuesday, October 4th, 2022 Finance Audit and Budget Committee to order. First item is Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next item is adoption of agenda. Need a motion to adopt.
So moved by Nard.
Support Van Sickle.
Moved by Nard, supported by Van Sickle. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is approval of minutes dated October 3rd, 2022. Need a motion to approve.
Motion to approve Van Sickle.
Support Nard.
Moved by Van Sickle, supported by Nard. Any corrections, updates? Seeing none, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Next item is public participation. This is the first opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on an item which is on today's agenda. There will be a second opportunity for public participation for those who would like to speak on any issue. Would anyone from the public like to speak? Going once, twice. We'll close public participation. Next item is budget reviews. Kicking off the budget season here. So the first one is facilities and operations. Commissioners, that's budget page C33 and C34. I know we have Lynn here that's going to go over that budget. Need a motion to receive and file, excuse me. Made by Farrington and supported by Wallace. Hi, Lynn.
Hi. Facilities and Operations is responsible for the operations and maintenance of county facilities. We're currently maintaining approximately 1.7 million square feet of buildings plus the grounds. Facilities consists of skilled trades personnel, boiler refrigeration personnel, custodial personnel, security personnel, and we have an administrative staff. The budget for facilities bears the expense of such items as the electric bills, the gas bills, water sewer bills. We have also the garbage pickup, the recycling, any janitorial supplies, equipment repair and maintenance, building repair and maintenance, elevator repair and maintenance. We also bear the expense for all the fire alarm lines, the boiler alarms, the sump pump alarms, and also the emergency phones that are inside the elevators. We also bear the expense of the property insurance. This budget also bears the expense for roofing repair and replacement, paving repair or replacement, hazardous materials abatement, floor covering replacement, tuck pointing, or any other building envelope issue. We also bear the expense of the court building precast inspection and repair. We also have a miscellaneous remodeling or a small building improvement dollars to work with. And we also have the underground expense for any sanitary or water lines that need to be repaired or replaced. The trades and boiler refrigeration personnel work under a work order system. So a department or a facilities staff issues a work order and it's given to the appropriate trade. Once they complete the work order, the labor and materials is applied, and then the expense is coded to the appropriate building and line item. The custodial and security personnel work in particular buildings. The custodians obviously are assigned to clean areas of the building, and they also assist in the snow removal, in terms of sidewalks and entries to the buildings. The security personnel work on shifts. They monitor the buildings. They open and close the buildings. They also maintain and monitor the parking deck through the use of the cameras and the intercom system. They also, after normal working hours, will alert us to any building or equipment issue that they believe that needs immediate attention. The overall increase in our budget is rather significant. I'll say that right up front. The increase from 2022 to 2023 is approximately $1,839,000. The first major category is personnel expense. So out of this 1.8 increase, 657,000 is the increase in this expense. And that is the potential for pay grade adjustments, also any increases in fringe benefits, and we did request an additional electrician position. As some of you may recall and others may not recall, in 2021, we actually unfunded 9 positions. And due to the volume of work, we are requesting that consideration be given to funding one of these previously unfunded positions, which is the electrician. This would also allow us to make additional inspections while we have contractors and vendors doing electrical work. We want our people to have the ability to review their work, making sure that it's being performed in an acceptable manner. The other major category, supplies and services. Some of the major expenses in this line item is janitorial supplies, grass cutting, snow removal, garbage pickup, recycling, and any hazardous waste disposal. We are projecting or requesting an additional $450,000. And the reason for this increase is we would like to make some grounds improvements, starting with the downtown campus, in particular the area between the county and court building, commonly referred to as Kennedy Square. If you've ever been in that area, we're starting to see quite a bit of deterioration with the raised planters in that area and also the raised planters in the court building. We also anticipate having slight increases due to the anticipated completion of the Marine Patrol Boathouse and Office of Public Defender. Those projects should be completed in '23. In conference and training, we requested an additional $500. We have an employee that's providing training not only to facilities personnel, but also to other departments. They are doing, or he is performing, defensive driving training, respiratory training, fall protection training. We also are going to have CPR training available to all employees. We also have some OSHA required training of lockout tagout procedures, arc flash training, and also aerial platform training. This additional $500 would help in training materials and any certificates that we would issue to the employees. The next major category is utilities, and this is where the electric bills, the gas bills, and water and sewer is running through. We've requested an additional $304,600. What we have seen over the past few years are the weather of extremes. We get long stretches of hot weather, long stretches of cold weather. So we see consumption increasing. We also have an increase in natural gas. And as of the September 30th budget run, we are at about 88% of our budget for electricity and 85% in natural gas. And typically, the end of September 30th, we would not even have the September bills in that particular budget run. The next major categories is repairs and maintenance, and we are requesting additional $280,100. This line item bears the expense of building repair, equipment repair, and elevator repairs and maintenance. It also includes items that were previously contained in the capital plan. So this would be the roof replacements or repairs, floor covering replacement or repair, exterior repairs to the court building precast, parking lot replacements and sidewalk replacements, tuck pointing in the building envelope issues, and also any of the underground lines. We are seeing a general increase overall in all categories. Prices seem to be rising, and we don't really see an end in sight. But one of the items that we will have for '23, every other year we have an inspection of the exterior precast to the court building. We don't have the final report, but some repairs will be required in 2023. And we do this so that we can maintain the continued integrity of that precast. In the original construction of the building, when they did the mix for the precast, there was too much fine sand and not enough air entrainment. So it makes it susceptible to the freeze-thaw cycle. So there's some work to be done in 2023. In addition, we are targeting a roof replacement at the Verkulen building. And this is the area that was I want to say it was the 89 addition to the building. And the preliminary projections on the cost of this roof is between $700,000 and $800,000. We also have a slight increase in vehicle expense. We asked for an additional $2,500, basically increases to cover increases in gasoline expense. Even though we were fortunate enough to get a couple of new vehicles, we do have an aging fleet. So we've got about 10 vehicles from 2005. Also in the area, the next major category is contracted services. It's expenses for items such as window cleaning, carpet cleaning, tile and grout cleaning, upholstery cleaning, and power washing. We are anticipating a slight decrease of about $10,000 in that particular category. We're watching, obviously we went through the period of the majority of the employees who are working remote. They're slowly coming back, so we're monitoring the cleaning of, for instance, the carpet and upholstery. There is still major departments that are still working remotely, so we're not going to go in and clean that carpet or upholstery if they haven't had the amount of traffic that they did before. We also have the next major account is capital outlay, and that's for the replacement of different equipment, meaning table saws, welding equipment, scissor lifts. We anticipate not needing the expense that we did have in 2022, so it's a decrease of $19,000. So that is pretty much recapping the budget request, if you have any questions.
Thank you, Lynn. Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. Lynn, welcome. I want to zero a little bit more into the supplies and services, 48% increase, $450,000 increase. That's a lot of Post-it notes and toilet paper. Can you peel back the onion a little bit more and dive in to where those big changes, because you said janitorial, snow removal, and you listed a few other areas. I couldn't understand why anything would jump nearly 50%. So
You said
if you dig that in, I'd
supplies
appreciate
and
it.
services? Is that?
Yeah, supplies and services.
Okay, that's
Thank you.
janitorial supplies. Like I had said, we see a general overall increase in almost anything we do. But the janitorial supplies, that's to cover the fogging. We are taking over a lot of the fogging that was previously done by an outside vendor. So we purchased the equipment and we are purchasing, obviously, the product. The grass cutting is pretty typical. We pretty much know how many grass cuttings we have in a season. Snow removal is sort of a wild card for us. It depends on when it snows, how long it snows, the time of day it snows, and how often they have to come back and salt. We had a lot of expenses in the early in the year, and if we close out the way we started that snow season, this line item could be in trouble. So we're trying to have enough money to cover that. We also anticipate the completion of the boathouse project and also the Office of Public Defender. So we'll have approximately 20,000 square feet more to maintain. And we also have asked for an allocation in this budget to make some improvements to the grounds. And that is addressing the planters, that if you go and look between the county and court building, we commonly refer to it as Kennedy Square. A lot of those raised landscape beds that have trees in them, they're deteriorating, they're cracking. We have to do something with that. So we also have the same situation in front or the main entrances of the court building. So it's an allocation to start making some of these improvements.
Still don't see $450,000 there in what you mentioned, but the fogging, the outside vendor, I mean, do we see savings somewhere else since we're no longer using a contract service?
Well, we are assuming that, but we're buying the product, and we're also buying some of the cleaning, more of the cleaning equipment.
So is that the contract services line, why it decreased by 10,000?
Yes.
So that's only, okay. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question in regard to the roof being repaired. Is this in relation to the health area being possibly redone, or is this separate from that?
It's separate from that.
So if this board voted on going forth with that rebuild, this would be in a different area than what they're planning on working on, or they want to work on?
No, in the rebuild or renovation, they're actually addressing the entire building.
Right.
But typically, they don't deal with the roof, just because you're doing an interior renovation.
Oh, I see. Yes. I didn't know what that all encumbered. All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Matuzik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Lynn. You mentioned that repair and maintenance was assuming some of the costs that have usually been in the capital budget. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yes, a few years ago, when you would have line items in the capital plan of roofing repairs, paving, it was considered to be a maintenance item, and it was believed that the appropriate budget would be the facilities building operating budget.
All right, so these weren't construction projects that one would think
No.
about in the capital plan.
It's just maintenance of the facility. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
So what happened was we moved those expenses into Lynn's department in the general fund, correspondingly decreased the contribution from the general fund to the capital improvement plan. It was just a shift.
Okay.
So that was 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago.
And that's what I meant to say.
And I think back, if I can jump in on Commissioner Farrington's question, I think quite a bit of the increase in supplies is specific to what Lynn was speaking about with Kennedy Square and the landscaping.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Lynn.
Good afternoon.
I'm not complaining about small increases, but with the crazy price of gas I don't know how much of vehicle operations is gas and fuel. It would seem like 2,500 might not be enough.
Well, what's different about our department is, you have some departments with vehicles that their job is to drive around to locations. We use these vehicles for the transport of materials and equipment in order to perform the work orders. So typically, we don't get a lot of miles on our vehicles. That's why we still have about 10 vehicles from 2005. So we don't use a lot of gas, but yes, there has been an increase in gas.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Okay, Lynn, I have a couple questions. So in regards to the supplies and services, I know you talked about the landscaping. Is that really a capital project? I mean, how often are we going to do that landscaping?
Well, we would like to start with the downtown campus and then go on to the other facilities. We would like to make some landscape improvements.
So you're estimating that 450,000 initially?
Well, because there's a lot of line items that roll up into that major category, some go down, some go up, actually requested in the name of enhancing the grounds about $500,000.
Okay. Looking at our audited financials here from last year, your budget actually had a surplus of about $2.3 million. So of your budget last year, you actually spent almost $15 million of it. Do you know, based on last year, where that surplus primarily was?
I actually hope Steve can answer that a little better. But a lot of our line items are rather unpredictable. It's not like buying office supplies that you have a pattern. We don't know what's going to break in a building, so we see a lot of times big swings in some of our line items from one year to the next.
Okay. Could you look into that? Because that's a pretty substantial number, $2.3 million. And I'd really like to know why it's so large. My last question is in regards to what you talked about with the Public Defender's Office and stocking that with janitorial supplies and everything that's adding to your budget. Maybe this is a Steve question, but are we not leasing that to the public defenders because that's through grant funding and then getting reimbursed somehow for that, Steve?
We aren't necessarily leasing that space to the state.
Okay.
They're paying the operating, or most of the operating expenses for the new personnel there, plus all but 100,000 of the renovations in that space.
But they're not paying for the supply, the
Well,
supply services?
It
or is
gets
that-
charged back through the indirect cost plan. Just
Okay,
along
so
the
you're
other
not,
department.
so you're not charging it through your revenue line for services or reimbursements, you're actually bearing it into your internal services?
Correct, and yeah, just like we charge back all the costs from facilities to all the other departments in the county. So they'll get charged back their proportionate share of all the costs.
Okay. Round two, Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. If this passes for Lynn here, which I expect it would, I don't know, and do you know when the roof would be rebuilt? Do you have an expectation of when? And would that be the spring or?
We would shoot for the spring.
And if the redo for the Verculium building would start, if that passes, do we have an expectation of when that would start?
That's going to be a while. They're going to spend an awful lot of time in design. You know,
So-
they have some conceptual ideas, but once you have your design professionals, you're going to be sitting down with the individual users, departments within the facility, and they will develop the floor plan and the preliminary design, followed by the construction documents. So I think the bulk of the construction probably will be more in 2024.
Thank you. So if this roof is put on, and then there's all the structure underneath in the building itself, I suppose they put on enough vents and all that stuff that they do. But sometimes when there's stuff underneath, they need other things. They would desire other things for a roof. Maybe not. But if there would have to be more work on the new roof, which maybe there wouldn't be, who would pay for that? Do we have an idea?
I mean, if there was a reason to where they had to supplement and put another rooftop unit on,
Or an area or something? I'm just curious.
I guess I'm not sure I understand your question.
Well, if you put a whole new roof on,
Yes.
from your department, and then they do this year, 2 years put together, which I understand, and then they decide they are going to, whatever they would put in, design the structure, and they realize that, oh gee, they need another vent here or another something else, who would pay for that? And I'm not saying that would happen, I'm just asking.
It would be in the construction budget.
So that would be the people again. Okay, thank you very much for answering my questions. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Steve? The whole indirect cost allocation stuff was to properly reflect in the budget where those costs are coming in from for electricity and things like that, correct? So this is kind of partnering on Commissioner Sabatini's question. I'm not sure how everything works with the Public Defender's Office, but in every other department, it really didn't change the budget so much. It was just reflecting where those costs were occurring. It just moved from a different part of the budget into those. So with regard to the Public Defender's Office, are we getting a reimbursement then for those costs being associated with that department?
As far as I understand, yes. So we build indirect costs into a number of our grants, then that get reimbursed. So child care fund, for example, and things of that nature.
Okay, that's why I was
I think
asking,
what
because
you're-
when we built it into everything else a few years back, we didn't bring in any more money, it didn't change anything, it was just properly reflecting where those costs
And
were.
that was when we built all the indirect costs into the general fund department. So you remember for years, we had built indirect costs into the grant programs.
Yeah.
And then we started building it into the general fund to more properly reflect the cost
So
of
you
those
think we
departments.
will get a reimbursement?
As far as I understand, we will.
Okay, that's all I have, thank you.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to follow up on Commissioner Zinner's question a little bit, because now I've become confused. We're not talking about replacing the entire roof at the Verculen building.
No, it's a portion.
It's a
the
portion.
89.
And it's a
addition.
portion that needs to be
Yes.
replaced now
Yes.
because it's leaking and that will cause
Yeah.
structural issues
It's
moving
starting
forward.
to blister, yes.
Oh, that's not good. All right, thank you. Now I'm unconfused. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Lynn, do you have your own capital improvement plan for like all the maintenance items that are built in there that you could share with us?
When you say the,
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get at is that this year, in regards to what you're talking about with the landscaping, the roof, all these things with the increase of 450,000, whatever that number is, is that in your actual worksheet by chance of everything that you're increasing The big ticket?
It's in the budget.
Okay.
Yes.
But it's not in the worksheet that you had filled out for the board, correct?
No, not.
No. Okay. That being said, so I did take a look at your worksheet. And thank you for filling it out as detailed as you are. It's very helpful to see it all filled out, trust me, because it alleviates a lot of questions on our part. But looking at your staffing, so I know you have a number of vacant positions that you're trying to find, one being boiler operators, which you're having difficulty. Are you having difficulty with any of the other ones?
We're having difficulty with most of them. It's hard to attract employees right now.
So are you losing them to the private sector primarily, or they're just not in the workforce?
Combination of retirements and also the trades going to the outside.
Okay. Okay. Seeing no other speakers, I think we are all set here, Lynn. Commissioners, please vote.
Motion passes 11 to 0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, next item is information technology, budget page C42. Need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Nard, supported by Farrington. Jaco,
Good
you have the
afternoon.
floor.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to present our budget. If you look at the IT budget, we also had a very significant increase in our budget request with about $2 million. Probably the main contributor is our maintenance account that went up from 555 or 5,555,000 to 6.76 million. The main contributors to that is the Axon digital evidence management system we put in place for the prosecutor's office, which is 166,000. Our Microsoft licensing has increased with $178,000. Our web hosting has increased with $45,000. Westnet, the company that we use for toning for our fire stations at the sheriff's office, $22,000. Codex Corp, which is an inmate tracking software at the sheriff's office, $31,000. Canto, which is a digital media management or digital media management software, $10,000. Another one, ChemImage Corp, is a mail scanning application for drugs and things like that for inmates. So that's also a new system being used by the Sheriff's Department. Highland, our on-base vendors, increased with $18,000. Presidio has increased with $81,000. Our Qualtrics vendor that we use extensively in the health department is increased with $28,000. Smartsheet that's used in finance and many other departments is increased with $20,000. Then also Velocimo is a company that we use for 2 integrations with DocuSign and Bluebeam. That has increased by $37,000. And then we also now taking over the maintenance for the election system. The original election system, ES&S, that we implemented was paid for by the state of Michigan when it was implemented. And we have to take that over now moving forward. And the county has to maintain the infrastructure and everything that goes with that. So you'll see some budget increases there as well, also on the capital side. And then, you know, a projected increase of 2.5%, as well as some contractual increases that we have with the different companies, is mainly responsible for the increase that we have in maintenance. We've also requested 3 new positions for IT, 2 of them named network support technicians, and this is to bolster our help desk staff. We, in the past 5 years, just from a ticket count on break fix, we've moved from about 6,000 tickets to over 13,000 now. So very significant increase in tickets and demands and things like that, which is fine, but that also impacts our services to our customers, which is obviously the departments in the county. And for that reason, we've asked for those 2 positions. We've also asked for a business system analyst position that will be solely dedicated to the prosecutor's office. Prosecutor's office has quite a bit of technology with the digital evidence management system that went in now, as well as the new case management system that is slated for next year, will come to the board later this year in December with that project. So the increase of the 3 positions, cost of that is around about $340,000. And then the rest of the increases in our salaries is, you know, obviously from the county's salary increases that we see countywide. We will bring the capital outlay budget to the board again in early 2023, like we do every year, to provide equipment pricing and so forth to get approval to move those items forward. And then I also just want to mention we asked for a small increase in our training budget of $2,500. We currently are on $45,000. And with everything now returning back to normal, we definitely have a need for, you know, more conference and training money. That's pretty much the main changes in our general fund budget. So if you have any questions.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
No, I don't know why you're in the back seat. Director Smeagol, if you could come forward, please. He's back there like we're not going to be calling him up every 5 minutes. This is a generalized question, not associated necessarily with IT, but I wanted to ask it going into budget. So we have the 2020 actual and the 2021 actual, 2022 amended. Didn't we have at some point a requested, recommended, and then theoretically there would be a requested, recommended, and then approved, which would be ultimately what's approved by the board?
I don't remember having those particular columns.
Do you remember having discussions, because we've added forecasted as opposed to, I thought we've had, maybe it's just me, maybe I've asked for it every year and haven't, and nobody else, so it's on my mind.
That might be what the case is.
That may be what the case is.
We've never had that.
We did buy for positions though, didn't we? Didn't we have?
No, not in this document. We may have had some
We have had
supplemental
a
schedules that we
supplemental document?
provided to you separately.
Okay,
And that may have been a few years ago.
okay. I'm asking because,
It was about 4 years ago.
Yeah.
We created another column because the board wanted to see the current year adopted, and
Please
the
come
current
to the
year
microphone
amended,
so
then
we
the
can
next
hear you.
couple of years.
Please.
Yeah.
Commissioners, probably about 4 or 5 years ago, you guys asked for an extra column to be built into the budget for a comparison between the current year's adopted and what was now amended going forward, then the next year's budget cycles. So we've got that column is hidden, it's there, it's available, but we're not printing, we're not using that comparison
but we
anymore.
did, we must have had a document that was requested by department, and that may have been a while back, because that's what opened up the
It may have
door.
been, I don't recall. It never would have been in this particular
Okay.
document.
Okay, and the reason I ask is, I don't know what's going to happen during this budget, but we may have individuals that are coming forward and saying they requested stuff that we were unaware of based on this document, correct?
I would expect
You would
some of that.
expect
I
that
would
to
expect
happen?
certain of that, yeah.
Okay. All right.
I don't know if it'd be widespread, but it wouldn't necessarily
Well,
surprise me.
and the reason it might be beneficial is because if one department comes forth, or two departments and come forth and say, actually, my requested was this, what Jacob just said was his request was exactly what's in the budget. I'm assuming that won't be the case with all of these. So if one comes forth and says, well, my request is this, what's missing for the board is that a whole lot of other departments may have requested things that they didn't get. And I just don't want the perception to be that one or two that spoke up didn't get their request, when in fact, it's pretty routine for departments to request positions that they don't get. Would you agree
Correct.
with that?
Correct.
So if that does come up where that happens, we may need that document to show the board that there are other departments that have been turned down for positions as well.
Correct, okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Jacob.
Good afternoon, Commissioner.
Are the various charges for software licenses charged back to the departments?
No, that would just be in indirect IT cost.
Why wouldn't we charge that back like we charge back electricity?
That's a question for Steve.
Because in theory, every software license we purchase every software license attached to a person. Because if we don't have a person to use it, there's no reason to buy the license, correct? So all these people in the various departments all have some number, 2, 3, 5 licenses attached to them, in theory. Why don't we charge the department so that we know the true cost
We
of
do.
doing business in
We
that
do.
department?
It's all part of the indirect cost allocation that we keep talking about. So costs of my office, Jayco's office, facilities, county executive, treasurer, purchasing.
Does that indirect
Um,
cost
and all-
back, like, there's some departments that have pretty expensive specialty software. Do you just amortize all the software across the number of employees and charge it back to the departments, or do you charge it back by the specific software packages that we're purchasing?
It depends on the software package. So if it's a countywide, it'll go countywide. If it's specific, it'll be based on users, sort of thing, depending on what the allocation statistic they call it is in the Maximus plan.
Are those numbers in this document?
No. You have, so the indirect cost allocation is composed of liability insurance, property insurance, phone charges, and the indirect cost allocation. The allocation by department is not in this document. I'm not sure exactly what you're asking for. If you send a request through Kyle, I can most likely get what you're after.
Well, the multi-million dollars of software licenses we're purchasing, you're saying get charged back to the departments.
Through the cost allocation plan,
I'd
correct.
just like to see how those numbers run.
In terms of the charges for IT back
Back to
through all
the
the
departments.
departments. Yeah, that I can compile. It's
Okay.
not in this document. Well, I don't have the document right here, but it's not in the budget. that
Thank you.
You have before you.
Looking forward to that. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. How you, Chico? Actually, I don't have a question on this budget, just something I noticed in your forecast and on the 3-year forecast. Maintenance, as we all know, has been rising quickly. In 2020, it was at 42.2% of the budget. It's now at 46.5% of the budget, and yet you have it flatlining where in 2 years it's less than current as far as a percentage of the budget. I would surmise that that's probably an inaccurate forecast going forward. It's probably going to get bigger.
I definitely would not argue that, Commissioner. It is just, in the current climate, it's extremely difficult to, and I don't want to ask, just put numbers up there.
I would in some regard, because we all know it's not going to be going down as a percentage. So
most likely
if we're
not.
going to actually do a forecast, let's budget that out probably
Okay.
more accurately. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Couple questions in regards to, I guess my first question is the indirect cost allocation. In your budget, it's a revenue. Is that correct, Steve?
We have that categorized there. That's a chargeback from the phone revolving fund that we have. That charges back, all the phone bills go into a different budget.
Okay.
And then we charge that back. You could consider it a reimbursement of sorts, I suppose, but there's a position in there. So that's what that number is.
There is a position in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So you put in the revenue side rather than
The
on
expense
the
side. We've
expenditure
done that
side
for
and making it a negative.
decades.
Okay. That was my first question. Second question is, it's going to be a common question for me this budget cycle. Audited financials, this department had a surplus of $1.6 million compared to your budget. Do we know what we didn't spend the money on in Jayco's budget?
Not off the top of my head. I mean,
Okay, so this is similar to Lynn's question, but
Similar to Lynn's question. So
between the two, that's like $4 million.
Correct. Some
Between
of
these
it's
two.
going to be personnel because
Okay.
of vacancies. I looked briefly, I don't want to quote numbers because I don't know off the top of my head. I had Dave look briefly in Lynn's budget. I think there's about 400,000 of hers is in vacant positions and personnel costs. There's a lot of other in utilities and maintenance, repairs in her budget. Specific to Jayco's, I don't know.
Okay. And then, in regards to the repairs and maintenance, I agree with Commissioner Van Sickle. I mean, I don't like how everything is put in one budget. I really would love to see the IT spread out by department personally, just so that we could see it, because, I mean, your cost is, between 2020 to now, has gone up, like $2 million. And it's a pretty big number. And not knowing specifically what departments that is targeted towards, it's really difficult for us to understand unless we quantify it based on licenses or specialty softwares or whatever, because the prosecutor has a specialty software that they're enacting and that's costing X, but that has nothing to do with with F&O's budget.
I understand.
So it's just very hard for us to see that. In regards to your worksheet relative to the trainings, I noticed that you're doing a workday conference. I know we're going through that transition right now. What's going to be at that conference that we theoretically need to be converting to Workday during that same timeline? Because I know, based on your email last week, basically next year is when we're converting over, theoretically, 100%?
Well, next year is going to be converting over a portion of it. It's going into 2024, getting that done. The timing of, conferences, for example, for Workday, which is a new system we're implementing, it's kind of sensitive. I think right off the bat, it doesn't have a lot of value until you really understand what the environment does for you. So I would think that next year would be a good time to start sending people to a conference like that, because you learn so much from people that has already implemented the system in their environments, and that kind of communication is not something you easily get just by making a phone call. So from that standpoint, we really value it quite a bit. And then, just learning to get to know the people and so forth that's on the same system that you are. The challenges that they had, a lot of the things are geared towards that, so people can see, whether everybody's happy that implemented the system and what were the major pitfalls and things like that. You really don't get that information anywhere else than working in a situation like that.
Okay, and then in regards to the positions that you're asking for, the three, just to be clear here, so that's one business systems analyst, and the other ones would be?
It's network support technicians.
Okay, for the help desk?
For help desk, yep. And those are the people that usually go out to our customers fixing things and so forth, and a little bit more advanced positions. So
And those are all full-time positions
all
or
full-time
part-time?
positions, yes.
Okay. Have we ever looked into those types of services that are more like on a part-time with, college students, IT, that are in those types of scenarios? Is that?
Yeah, we actually just had one that, he finished his time with us today, and it's going to continue in about 2-3 months.
Okay.
College student, and he's done excellent work for us. We're very happy. And he was brought in through HR and under an intern program. So that's actually, a matter of fact, one of the ways that we believe in the future that we will be able to get viable talent, because it is extremely difficult now.
Yeah.
To get
And that's what I was
qualified
asking, because I know we're having challenges right now in recruiting, and maybe this is one of the solutions to.
I believe it is. I mean, Sandy got this person in for us, and we've had a wonderful experience with him. Now, he's still in college, still finishing up his college, but I'm very interested in hiring him at some point, because I know he'll be able to do the job.
Okay, great. Seeing no other speakers, thank you, Chaco.
Thank you.
Please vote.
Commissioner.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is the capital improvement plan. I need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Nard, supported by Farrington. Steve, I think you're handling this one. Commissioners, this is at the back of the budget. Page. There's a letter, it's right after the letter.
Yeah, so my comments are usually very brief about this, at least up front, so I will immediately turn the floor over to Lynn, where she will go through the projects. What we did this year, I mentioned yesterday, is over to the right, we changed the format a little bit. I may have not mentioned this yesterday, I'm sorry. But we changed the format a little bit to show more specifics about the funding sources on a project-by-project basis to help everyone understand where the money is coming from for these projects. So,
Steve, do you want to, so with the F&O, why don't we start there?
Yeah, we'll
And
turn,
Lynn, why don't you come up and, if commissioners, let's do it this way. Why don't you focus on the three largest on your list for next year? And then if commissioners have any questions specifically about any other projects, we'll take those, obviously, and if any questions related to the ones that, so that would be probably Martha T. Berry, start there, your electrical upgrades, and then Public Works. Why don't we do those?
As far as the Martha T. Berry project, I actually do not have any information on that project.
Okay, that was quick. How about the Clemens Center? That's the next one right below it. For the public defender renovation.
Okay.
For 1.7
Out of
million.
order.
Yeah, it's for 1.7 million.
Yes. This project involves the renovation of vacant space. There's two separate areas within the Clemens Center that are contiguous that we would renovate approximately 7,400 to 7,800 square feet. And it's for the Office of Public Defender. Their mission or mandate is to provide effective legal representation to the indigent population that is charged with criminal offenses. This additional area would allow them to hire additional employees, also conduct meetings and having training space. As you may recall, in August, the full board did authorize the professional design services for this project. So we anticipate that they will have that completed in construction would occur in 2023. And as I had indicated and Steve has indicated, the primary funding source for this project is grants, but there is a county contribution of $125,000 towards this project.
Okay. Let's go to the underground electrical upgrades for 3.3 million.
Now I wish I would have numbered these. We have two primary feeds coming into the service center site, and each feed is fed by two separate DTE substations. So if we lose power to one of the feeds, we can switch to the other feed. It automatically transferred, restoring power. A few years back, we had some testing done on these feeds. These are very old feeds, and they're showing signs of weakness. So we had a plan developed so we could have a phase replacement. When you talk about the electrical infrastructure, this is our infrastructure to the service center. So this would be the final phase, and this would be the tie-in to Martha T. Berry, and it would also supply the link to the jail. All indications indicate that the feed to the jail is actually a direct burial feed, so we would want to put in a duct bank system, and the whole purpose is to protect those lines. So we anticipate going out for bids very early in 2023, and they would come back to this committee for approval.
Okay. Public Works for 40 million, I assume that's a Public Works question?
Yes.
Okay. Commissioners, I'm just hitting the high-level ones. Obviously, if you have any questions specifically about any of these, we'll take them in a second. The last one I have here is Comtech. Could you address that one, Lynn?
Comtech, we're actually trying to utilize space more effectively. So this is interior improvements. We would actually be placing like more of the public traffic areas towards the main entrance, and that would be easier for public access. We're also reallocating space to departments, either departments and or areas within a department that require more square footage. And what we are doing is taking advantage of the remote or hybrid working situation. And this actually, the design request came to this committee or this board and was approved in July, and that was for the design development and construction document phase. Then we would come back requesting the bidding phase and the construction administration phase.
Okay, great. Commissioner Kraft.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
The animal shelter questions, should I ask you or should I wait for Chief Randazzo?
He can probably address it in more detail, but we're trying to look to the future to see what should we be providing as it relates to animal control, sheltering of animals, and also adoption services. If you note on the plan that the bulk of the construction costs would be generated through donations.
That's a question I think I'll ask the sheriff. I'm looking at that number going, do we have that number yet? Or is that a 2025 number? But I see we're doing a needs assessment, looks like in 2023, with new facilities scheduled for 2025. I mean, do we need the needs assessment if we already have it in the plan to do a new facility?
Well, we're trying to figure out what is the state of the art and what we should be providing. And also in the capital development strategy, there can be a focus on the donation portion.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. I must have missed it. What is who's paying for the electricity? That 3.3 million?
The underground electrical, that's county. That is our infrastructure.
Also, how many citizens will be helped by this facility? What's the expectation of how many people?
Which facility?
I'm sorry, the Clement Center with the citizens, with the indigent citizens who need prosecutorial help.
I do not have that information, but I'm sure the Office of Public Defender has the breakdown.
Steve, have you heard anything about that? How many people?
I'm not aware of their caseloads, but if you remember a year ago, we added 21 positions, I think, to Mr. Tomko's budget.
Right.
To reduce the usage of what they refer to as roster attorneys. So we need the renovation of this space to house people. But I don't know their caseloads.
Right. Thank you for that. Thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On a number of these, as we go through the list, there is, I don't know, similar work or similar activities. There's like a couple of cases where we want to install surveillance cameras, etc. Are we figuring out how to combine this work? Are these each separate projects? I'm looking at ways to save money. One is surveillance cameras in the sheriff's office. One is surveillance cameras, I think, in your office.
I don't even see that on this list.
The sheriff's got jail surveillance cameras, phase 2. Public works surveillance cameras. Well, it's on the capital.
That's IT's portion of the capital plan.
I see. Well, I guess it's a broader question. I mean, when we're doing something that's similar work in two different departments, or are we in any way coordinating that to attempt to save money? This is a money-saving question. I'm about the money-saving question.
From a facility standpoint, I did want to mention about the jail projects. And obviously, we have the new central intake. We would like to actually fold in some of these projects because we don't want to be working against each other. For instance, the fire panels. We need one integrated system by the end of the day. So even if it's a different panel, they need to communicate. So we need to know what is being provided in the new one so that the end result, everything communicates. There's also some selfish reasons why I'd like to fold in some of these projects. We are really having difficulty getting projects engineered. It's because of the volume of work out there. But certainly the central intake is a large project. It's going to generate a lot of activity, large dollar value. But most important, we want to make sure that we're not going in one direction and they're going into another direction, and you find out at the last minute. So we would like to fold many of these in.
I think that that's really critical because a lot of the projects on here are similar in terms of what you're installing or what you're fixing or whatever. It would be great to figure out how to coordinate those.
Yes.
My second question is about energy conservation. The county ends up saving money in the long run, the more energy efficient we are. And we're now talking about installing significant electrical things, significant HVAC things. I'm hopeful that we're seriously considering energy conservation as we look at these upgrades.
Yes, generally speaking, we had a big LED lighting project, but generally speaking, all equipment of today uses less energy. There's also a new energy code that's making you use things that are more energy efficient. But if I could talk a little more about the jail and the emergency generators, we have 2 smaller generators, and we also have a 2 megawatt generator, so that's 2 million watts, so it's a very large generator. I'd like to sit down with the design professionals on the central intake. If we can size the generator, one generator, to handle what the other 3 are handling, then we obviously will not replace those. So we're looking at items like that.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kraft, second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Steve, this one's for you. When it comes to the capital projects and the ARPA funding, you said those are under grants, right? If I'm looking at the sheet right here with the dollar amounts, that's in the section to the right with grants. It's not specific. It doesn't specifically say ARPA funds, but I can kind of piece that together where the money's going.
Correct.
Is that
Right, so the central intake
And,
is ARPA,
Public Works, ARPA?
ARPA, and the majority of the Verkulen building is ARPA as well. Although there's $25 million built into the cost of the Verkulen building from the state.
Okay, that's just not broken out. Okay, that's helpful. So these are on here even though they're basically discussion items, haven't been fully
Correct.
confirmed yet, but just sort of an estimate of
It's on our
what's
radar.
to come.
Just
Sure.
it's on the radar.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Lynn, in regards to the electrical upgrades, is that work going to be bid out?
Is that the underground electrical?
Yeah, the 3.3 million.
Yes, absolutely.
Is going to be bid out,
Yeah.
okay. And how much of the capital fund budget for this year do you anticipate being spent?
Well, I took a different approach in this capital plan reflecting our reality. So a lot of times you'll see a smaller amount in '23 because I'm trying to get the design services, and then the bulk of the work would happen the following year. So that's what we're trying to do, and we're trying to, like I said, line up the jail project so that we can incorporate some of these
Okay.
items.
A lot of moving parts.
Yes.
In some of these projects, this might be a little bit of a funny question to say the least, but are any projects coming in under budget?
No,
No.
no.
Okay. If they are coming in under budget in the past, have we just been recirculating that money into another project typically? Is that what we do, Steve?
So if we initially, well, let me ask, I'm not sure, I'll answer your question in two different ways because I'm not sure where you're headed with it. If we initially fund a project of some sort and it comes in under budget after we fund the capital improvement plan, those savings go back to the, say, we send money to the capital projects fund. If it comes in under budget, then that money goes back into the capital improvement fund.
Okay.
If
So-
it's
Go ahead.
on the plan, for example, the jail management system, I believe, was on the plan for almost $2.5 million this year. It came back at 1.2. We transfer the 1.2, and then the remainder basically stays in the general fund.
Right. Okay.
So it's two-pronged, two different ways of looking at, depending on if a project comes in under budget after we fund it, or the bids
So
come in
the other
up front.
fund for the surplus, the other fund that you put it into, thinking that we've saved some money there, how much money is in that fund at the end of the year?
Today, 11.4 million.
Okay, so that is that the funding source line, or is that a totally different, has nothing to do with any of this, on the last part of this diagram?
On page 3,
Yeah.
that's the first line of the funding source section.
Okay, so that is your balance.
In the
your
capital
your rolling
improvement
balance.
fund, yeah.
Okay. That answers my question. Okay, it looks like there are no other questions for the F&O part. And commissioners, obviously, as some of these departments come to us, like Martha T. Berry and some of the ones, Public Works, we can ask those questions directly to those departments because Lynn doesn't have those answers. As many answers as you do have, Lynn, you don't have those.
Thank you. If I could just add, certainly if any commissioner would like to tour and take a look at some of these projects, we'd be more than happy to make those arrangements in any time during the year.
Great, thank you. Okay, next part here is the capital improvement plan summary, which is the IT part. And Jaco, let's take the same strategy. So we do have the looks like Citron only take for 4.5 million is your largest one. Your second one would be the prosecutor case management system, and it looks like Public Works, which we can ask Public Works, or do you want to address the Public Works one?
Just very basic.
Okay, why don't you start off there, and then we'll take individual questions from the commissioners.
Okay. The central intake system for health and community services, the goal of that is to stand up a more robust intake system to these different entities that's going to be in that building. Reduce duplication, and I think a very important component is the sharing of information, so that we can significantly improve our services to constituents. There is potentially money available that will assist with the cost of this. From what I understand, it's not going to be just a county expense. But I cannot tell you how much of that will come from grants. The Public Works Stormwater Asset Management Project is again one project where the Public Works Commissioner was able to work out a grant 50-50 match with the Army Corps. If you remember, we had a project like that that's finishing up now. That was a 50/50 match for their scanning, and it really helped us tremendously. Same thing here. It's also a 50/50 match. Beyond that, I think Public Works will be able to explain better, what they're trying to accomplish, but it is specifically for stormwater. What was the other one, Commissioner, that you mentioned?
Case management for the prosecutor's office.
Oh, case
That was
management for the
$760.
prosecutors, yeah. So the case management for the prosecutors is, you probably remember, has been on the 23 budget since last year. And we did the RFP, completed the RFP, and we are ready. We were just not ready for this specific meeting this coming Thursday, but we are ready to bring that to the board. We're going to bring that to the board in December. That's on track at this point in time, so don't foresee that there will be any major obstacles.
Okay.
And that is obviously to replace their PAC-PAM system. That's a state-owned system. And this has been on the cards for a while, so we'll be happy to get to that point.
And then I overlooked one, Jaco, which is the software def networking for 865. Looks like.
Oh, yeah, software-defined networking. That, Commissioner, is, if you remember, during COVID, we came to you with a few projects, actually, that we are paying on a 5-year 0% interest. And that is specifically for software-defined networking. It was a replacement of our whole infrastructure, specifically talking about switches and routers and things like that, with a new system as well as completely redesigned system. So that's the software payments. And I think we have 2 left, if I'm not mistaken, something like that.
Okay. Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Hi, Jaco.
Hi,
I have
Commissioner.
a couple questions on some of the smaller dollar items that you have. The electronic doc management for $80,000 a year. What does that entail?
Electronic document management is, related to our whole on-base infrastructure. And what we're doing is, with some departments where it makes sense, we would, get their documents, scan them in so they can use the documents electronically. If you remember, during COVID, we did for environmental health. We did some for community corrections and places like that. So that's what that is for.
So you foresee the next 4 or 5 years having to
Yeah, we
continue that
foresee
process?
that process is just going to continue as people, and especially with remote work, that has really accelerated a lot of that. So the need is pretty big.
Okay, Jaco. And then last question I have is under the miscellaneous upgrades. Why the swings? It goes from 170 to 120 down to 10, and then back to 120 and to 10. Is that an error, or is that? Can you explain that for me?
Yeah. So miscellaneous user hardware is or are you just talking about upgrades, or are you talking about miscellaneous user hardware?
The item here says miscellaneous upgrades.
Upgrades.
It's 40,000 over the next 5 years. It just has some pretty wild swings that I don't quite understand.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. That's really for IT, for licensing and systems that we work on that we want to expand and things like that. As you can see, we don't need money every year for that, but that's really the purpose for that.
Thank you, Jaco. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
I'm just curious, why do we have line items in here that have no 5-year allotment and aren't listed in any of the years and have, they're just dashes all the way across? Why are they in here?
Those won't. Yeah.
They should not be.
Those rows need to be in, that's my error.
Okay, thank you. Oops.
Oops, thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Jaco, in regards to the animal control, the surveillance system there for 84,000 for next year, if we're doing a space needs and net assessment, and we're looking to build a new facility, why would we want to spend $84,000 on surveillance systems?
Yeah, I completely understand that. It was just expressed to us that the need for that is getting pretty dire over there. They're dealing with, from what I understand, quite a bit of animals that gets dropped off during the night, gets tied to the fences. They had a incident of a dog attacking somebody. The dog jumped over the fence and got out somehow. Things like that they feel at this point in time, their current camera system, I don't think is really functional anymore. And it's becoming a dire need. I have to say, if we put in new systems there today and, a new building is being built, you can definitely build on that system and put the cameras and stuff like that in the new building. So at this point in time, it's a timing thing.
Yeah, I've asked about these surveillance systems because I know we did it for the purchasing department, where they were requesting one due to security and theft, and asking this vendor, which I believe we're using the same vendor for the surveillance systems because they have the most knowledge, to do an assessment just for all of our buildings. Because I know, as Commissioner Matuzak said earlier, you're looking for surveillance cameras here in the jail. Obviously, I would assume it's the same vendor that's doing that work. Wouldn't it make sense that they would just do that as part of the services that they're looking to retain here of about $200,000?
Yeah, we did that this year because it was budgeted for in the capital budget for, the building on M59 and a few other places. So we lumped together, I think, 3 different projects into that one so that they could do it. The situation at Public Works, there's one at Public Works replacing their camera system, which is also aging, as well as animal control. That's all that was not in this year's budget, and that is really the main reason we're doing that. The other challenge that we have is, you will also see in my capital budget, we're asking for replacement of the system at Comtech, as well as the downtown system, which is this building and the court building and so forth. The head end of that system, which is the control of that system, right now we cannot add cameras anymore to Comtech, and we also cannot add cameras anymore to this building. And the problem with that is each and every one of the ones we do in the interim, we have to buy a small head end for that so that that can move forward until we upgrade the system at Comtech. At the time that we upgrade that, then we can add more cameras and also add other buildings to it. But at this point in time, that caused problems for us.
Okay. Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, Jaco.
Commissioner.
Let's go back to the animal control building. You said that the security system, the surveillance system is non-functional there?
It's not working very well, and I don't think the quality of the cameras is.
If we spend this $84,000 to put in a new security surveillance system, who would be monitoring that?
We at IT will be implementing it, installing it, but we don't monitor the system to see what's going on.
Who
That's on the department.
would monitor it, though?
The department that themselves, I would ask that question to the director over there.
So we don't have any central monitoring for all our security systems?
Nope.
And so if the security system there is non-functional, obviously nobody in the department is monitoring it. So if we put in a functional security system, then they have to pay somebody to monitor it. So I know that's them and not you, but there should be some personnel uppers someplace to cover that. Do you see where I'm going with this?
I understand. I think the majority of the implementations of that kind in the county is not for active monitoring, but when an incident happened, that we have the proof to go in and see exactly what happened.
So you mean we just record?
So we record it, and there's retention period for each and every department that we agree with the departments, and keep that data for a specific time. And if they find an incident in that time, then we can pull that incident and then save it off and keep it indefinitely. But, it goes anywhere from 7 to 90 days, depending on the need.
Do your people, would it be in the works to have your people have access to that security system to actually do the saving of any required recordings?
Well, currently, that's how it works. With the newer systems now, there's more intelligence built into these systems, so they can actually go in and extract data for you at specific time intervals, things like that you need, or even identifying, if you can identify a specific person, they can look through all the footage for you automatically and find all the footage that person shows up again in that specific building.
When you say they can look, you mean the security
The
systems
software.
themselves, the
Yeah.
software themselves?
So it saves a lot of time, but at this point in time, we don't have that capability. So if an event happens, either the office will reach out to us and ask us, can you please pull footage from this time to that time on that specific day? And then we pull that footage and provide it to them. And they go through it and find whatever they're looking for.
So even though the software has the ability to go and do some of the searching and the manual work for you, somebody has to go and kick it off and initiate it.
Well, today, we don't really have that capability.
I understand.
In the software, yes.
So in the future, when you do have this capability, would that be under the control of the various departments, or would you be able to remotely handle those requests and tell the equipment to go search and save?
Yeah, we can handle that, but we believe the best course of action, because there's so many departments, many areas where people are looking for specific things. When it comes to the actual management of that, most of the departments can do that themselves, to provide them the capability to search their own footage. In other words, like you mentioned, if they want to kick off a search between a specific time for a specific person, the department can do that. We can provide them with the permission to do that. There's controls in place that people cannot just go in and check surveillance video for their staff or things like that. That has to be approved by the executive office. So we don't pull footage like that. We will only pull it if it's a active case that comes to us, a police case. We will pull a video for them, or if it is direction that's coming from HR, which they get approved by the executive office.
Well, I was wondering about the security of the recording equipment, because how do I want to put this to be politically correct? It wouldn't be totally unheard of for an employee to maybe hit the delete button if their buddy was the one doing the nefarious act.
I completely understand that, but with that also goes that accountability and responsibility of providing specific people, the ability to do that. So if a person go in there, another thing the software does is audit itself. So if somebody logs in with their user account and something happens during that time, you know who did it, whether it was accidental or not.
Oh, okay. Good deal. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, seeing no other questions in regards to the capital improvement plan, please vote. Thank you, Jaco.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Motion passes 11-0.
Okay, next item is public participation. This is opportunity for the public who would like to, public participation for those who would like to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any issue. Anyone in the public like to speak on any issue? Going once, twice. We'll close public participation. Commissioner comments? Seeing no commissioner comments. We'll go to item number 9, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Made by Kraft, supported by Zinner. Have a great rest of the day, everybody. See you tomorrow.